Support nuclear energy for our country. After this conference, I'm to your complete disposal to discuss our party's objectives. This discussion will take place at the restaurant El Bayo, where we are meeting after the conference. Now we will continue with the most important part of this evening, and I think that's why we're all here. I would like to inform you that after the presentation, you will have the opportunity to ask your questions, not only to Benjamin, but also to our nuclear friends. A microphone will be provided to you. Benjamin is a physicist studying to become a nuclear engineer, and he will now come and talk about nuclear power and hopefully convince you of all of the possibilities the technology has to offer. Such event is a first in Luxembourg, and we hope that we'll be able to get our politicians to recognize nuclear power as a solution for our future. Benjamin, it's now to you with a presentation speaking about nuclear power in Luxembourg and around the world.
Thank you very much, everyone, for coming here today. So, we all know about climate change, and all the consequences are going to be the rise of sea level, all the climate catastrophes that we're going to have. And this is because of the carbon emissions. So as you can see, from the 700 to 2022, we have been outputting in the atmosphere a lot of carbon dioxide. Today we produce more than 35 billion tons of CO2 in the air. And where does that CO2 comes from? Well, we're burning a lot of stuff. You can see on this graph that we're burning a lot of coal, of oil, and natural gas, and then we produce just a tiny fraction of non-carbon producing energy, like nuclear, hydropower, wind, and so on. If we look at just 2022, you can see that 22% of all our carbon emission come from natural gas, 30% from oil, 25% from coal, 6% from biomass, we have 4% from nuclear, 6% from hydropower, 3% from wind turbine, and then you have 2% from solar energy. What you need to understand from this graph is that 84% of all the energy we consume today comes from burning something. And so, to solve climate change, we talk a lot about renewable energy, so solar, wind, also hydropower. But there's always that one technology we're not talking a lot about. It's nuclear power. And that's why we're going to talk today about nuclear power in Luxembourg and around the world. So, to do that, we're first going to talk about what is nuclear power. Then we're going to explore why Luxembourg needs to consider nuclear power. And finally, what is happening around the world with nuclear energy. So, first of all, what is nuclear power? If you take a very powerful microscope and you zoom into anything, which is a table, yourself, you'll see that everything is made of atoms. An atom is simply electrons, and a nuclei. The nuclei itself is made of protons and neutrons. In nuclear energy, we don't care about electrons. What we do is we take a neutron, we throw it at the nuclei, it will become unstable and fission, and produce, two fission products and 3 neutrons, which will go on to make more fission in a nuclear chain. As you can see here, this is the diagram of how your typical nuclear power plant works. It's like 90% plus of all the nuclear power plants in the world. We will first have the nuclear reactor itself. So this here you have a picture of a nuclear vessel. In there you put the nuclear bundles, the fuel bundles, and in this you find the actual nuclear fuel. So this is actually what uranium looks like. And so, how does it work? So, are you going to work? It's not working. Well, anyway, so you have here the nuclear core. That's where you find the uranium, which will start to heat thanks to fission. And in the pressure vessel, so the temperature will rise, and the hot water is going to be circulated in what we call the primary circuit. Then the water is going to be sent to a steam generator, which will later on also generate steam, which will then sent to the steam turbine, which will generate electricity. This, at the output of a steam turbine, the steam is then condensed into liquid water and back into a steam generator. This is the secondary circuit. Finally, you have the third circuit where you have cool water that can come either from a basin or from the ocean to provide cooling for the steam from the steam turbine. And so, if you look at your typical nuclear power plant, so this is Cattenom nuclear power plant, it's 20 kilometers away from here. We can very easily identify each element of it. So here you have one nuclear reactor. So you have here the cooling tower. This is the electrical island where you find the steam turbine and the nuclear reactor. So this, what I present to you, is not the only design that exists. There are multiple designs. On top over there, you have what we call lead-cooled reactors. Then the two on the left of the right side here, those are gas-cooled reactors. You have then molten salt reactors, sodium-cooled reactors, and finally supercritical reactors. So what you need to understand is that each one of those reactors are being researched around the world, and each one of them have some pros to them. For example, molten salt reactors, they cannot explode, period. So Fukushima, Chernobyl is virtually impossible, well, literally impossible. So now we have to address the elephant in the room and talk about some of the myths about nuclear power. One of them is there is nothing we can do about nuclear waste. Here you have a picture of our dear friends Paris Wines and Mark Nelson, and they are next to some nuclear waste, so nuclear caskets. If you were to go in there, you would be dead. But the amount of shielding those concrete flasks provide, it makes it extremely safe to be next to it. So we know how to protect ourselves from radiation. So there's no problem with nuclear waste. And even, I will go as far as to say that there are not really any nuclear waste today, or at least so little. Let me explain. In blue here, you have what I represent the nuclear fuel. What we do, we put the nuclear fuel in the nuclear core, and after 18 months, we take out the fuel, and what happens is your typical nuclear reactor only extracts 5% of the energy from its fuel, which is represented by the purple rectangle up there. This means that 95% of what we call nuclear waste is actually nuclear fuel. In the industry, we call it actually spent fuel. So the whole thing, we call it spent fuel. So technically, all the nuclear waste in the world is just 5% real nuclear waste. We could recycle it. There are nuclear reactor designs that can do that, but it's not really done for economical reasons. But there are solutions to the proper nuclear waste, which we call fission products. Allow me to present to you a Belgian project, which is the MIRROR project. The idea is you take the fission products, you bombard them with protons, and then they will become inactive, so no more radioactive. Another Belgian project is the SMELT project. So the idea is when you have some elements that were exposed to radiation, they become activated, so they become radioactive. And the idea is to take apart, so to separate the bad stuff from the good stuff, which could be then reused in the industry. Another myth, there is not enough uranium to power the whole world, which is entirely false. In this graph, this is the estimates of the amount of uranium in the world. So we find uranium everywhere. You have in vein deposits, in shells, and granite. If you have a countertop in your kitchen that is made of granite, there's a uranium in it. And if you don't know how to read powers of tens, this is how many tons you can find. So for example, in the granites, you have 2 trillion tons of uranium. this means that we can power the world for a very long time. And one very interesting part of this graph is that there is actually uranium in ocean water. And the most pessimist estimates tells us that if we were just to use the uranium found in the seawater, we could power the entire world for at least 100,000 years, the entire world. And so this technique is actually called uranium seawater extraction, and there is a lot of research being done around the world, so in the United States, in Japan, also China. So we have a lot of nuclear fuel, there is no problem with that. Another myth is, if there is a terrorist attack, we are doomed. Very often here in Luxembourg, we hear that if there's a plane crashing on Cattenom, it's the end of the country, which is, again, entirely false. So, again, those are nuclear caskets. This is where you put the spent fuel, and we need to transport them. And we know how we have built some caskets that are very, very solid. In 1980s, the UK did an experiment. They took a train and they threw it at a nuclear casket. So here's another angle, and nothing ever happened to it. So there could not be any radiation leak. And 10 years earlier, the USA, they put a truck and they put some rockets on it because America. They threw it against a brick wall, and well, again, for the nuclear casket, there was no leak, there was no issue with that. And then they took the same nuclear casket, again, rockets on a train, because America, and they crashed it against it, and it still survived. It was damaged outside, but no damage inside. So we know how to build very safe stuff. So another question is, what happens if an aircraft was to crash on a... So another question is, what would happen if an airplane was to crash on a nuclear power plant?
The screen is...
Yeah, no, don't worry. So the US, they just did that. They took an F-4 Phantom, which is a fighter plane, they put it on rails, and at the end of the rail line, so you don't really see it here, but they put a huge concrete wall. And what they did is they accelerated the aircraft with, again, rockets against this very thick concrete wall. So, 1, 2, 3. The aircraft reached 800 kilometers per hour. For our American friend, that's 500 miles per hour. And the aircraft literally vaporized. So you have seen here some slow-mo shots. As you can see, not much of the aircraft was left. And the Americans actually found out that if an aircraft was to crash against a nuclear power plant, the most dangerous part is not the fuselage itself, it's just the engines. So there's literally no issue on that. And you'll see in the next part what happened to the wall itself.
One more view.
Yeah, it's just the next one. Okay. I'm speaking too fast. No, it wasn't the next one.
But I can't. I think it's nice.
Yes, I think.
Oh, okay. It's nice to see the plane crash. And as you can see, only the wing survives the crash itself. And now, finally, the aftermath. This is mostly the aircraft that was pulverized. And as you can see, not much happened to the wall. The joke is, what happens if an aircraft crashes into a nuclear power plant? How much damage will occur? And the engineers will say 60 millimeters at most. So yeah, so we know how, and this is what happened in real time. Voilà. So we know how to build very solid, so there is no issue in that. So another myth is it takes too much space. This is how much land is required for wind, solar, and nuclear to produce 26 terawatt hours of energy. This is the amount of energy needed to power the USA. And what you really need to understand is that nuclear power is at around 100 times, needs 100 times less space compared to renewable energy. Another thing is, because a nuclear power plant is basically concrete and steel, you need far, far less materials for the same amount of energy output compared to geothermal, wind, hydro, and solar. Finally, the last myth is nuclear power is too expensive. You may have seen this kind of graph, so you will see that solar panels, so solar is between $29 to $92 per kilowatt hours. Then you have wind, which is between 27 and 73, and finally you have the nuclear power, which is between $114 to $222 per. But this graph is very misleading because it talks about the LCOE, also known as the levelized cost of electricity. The way it works is you take how much money the power plant will cost, and you divide it by the amount of energy it will produce for a certain amount of time. And this tells you how much you need to sell your electricity to break even. And the reason it doesn't work for renewable energy is because the LCOE doesn't take into account the value of electricity during a certain period of a day. So here, this is the graph of the energy consumption in Germany in 2024, so the 10th week. And each peak, the biggest peak, that is during midday, the second peak, that's around 6 p.m. And you see you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days of a week and the 2 days of a weekend. And now, this is the solar output of Germany during that same period. So not only do you see that, well, solar is not really reliable, but what is the value of electricity when you don't have any electricity produced? And so that's why you need backup, you need battery storage, you need gas power plants, and this costs a lot of money, which is not generally taken into account in the levelized cost of electricity. So I made the endeavor to calculate how much it will cost for a country to become 100% renewable versus 100% nuclear. And so what I did is I took climate data from the European Bank of Data. So here you have the wind across Europe into January 2009. And my conclusion is, if Germany wanted to become 100% renewable, that would cost them 10,000 billion euros. And if Luxembourg wanted to become 100% renewable, that's 200 billion euros. And my numbers are right, because the Fraunhofer Institute in Germany, their scenario of 90% renewable, and they cheated a little bit in their numbers, they announced that it's 6,600 billion, not million, that's a typo. So my numbers are good. So now, what about nuclear? How much will it cost? Well, it kind of depends. If you build a nuclear power plant, so you build a nuclear power plant from Korea, China, or Russia, the price will be between 4 to 7 billion per gigawatts. To give you an idea, Luxembourg needs 1.2. And if we were to build a nuclear power plant from France or the US, we are in the 10 billion range, something of the sort. And so for Germany to become 100% renewable, we are, so from Korea, China and Russia, we are between 300 to 600 billion, whereas France and USA, that will cost them 800 billion euros. Likewise for Luxembourg, we are between 5 to 9 billion from the other countries and 12 billion plus for the France. So, yeah. So now we're going to look at why nuclear power is necessary in Luxembourg. So we have the Luxembourgish Institute of Regulation, which regulates the energy in Luxembourg, and they have some very interesting numbers. So if we look at the volume of imported energy, and also if we take into account the exported energy, so Luxembourg needs approximately, so it's 6 terawatt hours of energy, and only, you can see that 50% of all the energy that we use is imported from Germany. Then you have 29% that comes from Belgium, 2% from France, and we only produce 19%. And, sorry, yeah, no, go ahead. Okay. And if you look at our national production, so you can see that we have natural gas, hydroelectric, wind turbine, biogas, solar, biomass, and waste incineration. So it's negligible, but it's still being produced. And you can see on this chart that basically half of our own energy production is renewable, the other half is not. So we produce a lot of carbon emission. And now, here's I think the most interesting part is this graph, so this table is the volume of electricity per sector. So you have how much electricity is being consumed by residential, by professionals, and the industry. And so, what you need to understand is that the residential area, so we represent 81% of all clients, but we only use 16% of the electricity. Whereas, so the professionals, so commerce, they represent 18.8% of all consumers, and they consume only 27% of the electricity. And now, the industry, so ArcelorMittal, Simalux, and so on, they represent 0.06%, but they consume 57% of the energy. So the industry in Luxembourg consumes a lot of energy. And this graph is also quite interesting because it tells us how much power is required to power the country. In general, we peak at 1100 watts. I have seen in some data 1200 megawatts, so I always go with 1200. So what you need to remember from this graph is that Luxembourg imports most of its electricity. The industrial and professional sectors are the biggest consumers by far, and Luxembourg needs at most 1.2 gigawatts of electricity. And how many nuclear reactors that represent? So if we take Cattenom example, Cattenom, one reactor can produce 1.3 gigawatts of electricity. So we need just one reactor, and we are 100% nuclear powered. But this doesn't stop here. The government actually wants to bring about electrical cars and also hydrogen-powered cars. And we can approximate the amount of nuclear power plants we will need to power us, because so you have the mobility of a group of the Luxembourgish group of energy mobility, which is also represented by the groupement, so the petrol product group from Luxembourg, and they have some statistics about our energy consumption in terms of petrol. And as you can see, from 2000 to 2022, we have consumed 2,300 it's a kiloton equivalent of petrol, and most of it comes from diesel. So it's approximately 52% of our petrol consumption is for diesel. If we suppose that all this energy was to be produced by a nuclear power plant, that represents just one nuclear reactor. So if we were to be, all our cars or vehicles were to be electrified, we need to add one reactor. If we wanted to produce hydrogen, that's two more, because there are inefficiencies in hydrogen. And this is the best case scenario, because you have those charging stations, and each one of them can develop different amounts of power. So you have 10 kilowatts, 20 kilowatts. And to explain you, there are 450,000 cars registered in Luxembourg. And with the 200,000 people that comes from the borders to work here, we can more or less estimate that there are 600,000 cars in Luxembourg itself. Now, the worst case scenario that could happen is that everyone at 8 a.m. they all plug their cars at the same time. So if you were to plug your car in your typical outlet, so it can produce, a typical outlet produce 3.5 kilowatts, and you will need 1.6 nuclear power plants like Cattenom to produce enough power to recharge those cars. Now, if you have a 10 kilowatt recharging station, you'll need now 4.6, and again, if you have 15 kilowatts, you need near 7 nuclear power plants like Cattenom, and finally 25 kilowatts, you need nearly 12 of them. Obviously, this is a worst-case scenario, it doesn't represent reality, but what we need to understand is, in the future, Luxembourg will need a lot more energy than what we use today because of the electrification of all systems. One thing I want you also to understand tonight is that we always associate nuclear energy with electricity. However, I always argue that a nuclear power plant is a source of electricity and a source of heat, because in a nuclear reactor, only 30% of the energy goes to make electricity. The rest, the 70%, are just lost in the cooling towers, and we're not doing anything about it. And one thing that we could do is what we call cogeneration, and use district heating to distribute the waste heat to heat homes. And this is what China is actually doing. They have built an intensive network of district heating thanks to nuclear power. And also, we could use small modular reactors in strategic places in different cities to again produce just so we can produce electricity and heat, or just heat if we need to. Again, also, small modular reactors could be used in the industry. Allow me to talk a little bit about Lëtz. It's a cement company in the south of Luxembourg, in the Esch-sur-Alzette. And the way you make cement is you take some rocks, you break them down into very fine powder, and then you need to heat them up to approximately 1400 degrees Celsius, and then you produce cement. In Luxembourg, Lëtz is using pulverized coal to make their cement, which, well, produce a lot of carbon dioxide. And nuclear power could help such companies, because we can actually have what we call very high temperature nuclear reactors. So this design actually produces 1300 degrees Celsius. And we don't necessarily need all designs to be like that one, but we could have very specialized nuclear reactors for different industries. Like also we have ArcelorMittal in Luxembourg, which is the steel production company. They could have their own nuclear power plant to produce their own electricity, to sell their steel as cheap as possible. So, now we've seen a little bit about Luxembourg, and so let's talk a bit about nuclear power in the world. So, this month we have seen a lot of news about nuclear power. First, Italy is actually looking for a partnership with Westinghouse and EDF to produce some parts for nuclear power plants. We have also seen that now Google is actually going to invest a lot into nuclear powers in small modular reactors, because their servers actually need to run 24/7, and nuclear power is, well, a very reliable source of energy. Same with Amazon. They're also going to to invest in nuclear energy. Likewise, you have Three Mile Island that is now restarted for Microsoft. You also have in Japan, so on the 29th of this month, they are going to restart the Onagawa nuclear power plant. And just for the story, Onagawa nuclear power plant is the power plant that was hit by the worst part of a tsunami. And on the day it happened, people actually took refuge in the power station itself. And if you look at the news articles from this period, just before Fukushima started to become a problem, people actually congratulated Onagawa to be an example of how a nuclear power plant can resist such events. You also have, so it's the Kazakhstan. So the people in Kazakhstan have voted in so it's 63.8% that they were in favor of building a nuclear power plant. And obviously, China, so you are capable of building AP1000 nuclear power plants, which are very powerful, in a 4-year time frame, which is unheard of for the Western world for now. Finally, we also have the world's biggest banks. So you have Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, which are invested now heavily in nuclear power. Earlier this year, I went to a conference on how to invest in nuclear power, and one of the presenters said, yes, nuclear power is like Bitcoin, but for old people. So, one thing also that we can address around the world is nuclear power can become a source of resources. Allow me to present you BN 350 that was built in Kazakhstan, and it was built by the Russians. And this nuclear power plant is very special because it's the first one in the world with seawater desalination capacities. It was capable of producing 350 megawatts of electricity and produce 120,000 cubic meters of water per day. That's approximately the entire consumption of water in Luxembourg. So a small nuclear reactor like that, we could make a lot of water for us, for many regions. For example, I know that in eastern China you have issues with water shortages, and you guys could actually use cogeneration to make fresh waters for your own cities. No, this one let's skip. Also, this is more of a, some people don't like to talk about this, but I would say it anyway. We can use nuclear power plants to produce vegetables. So they are vegetable. So those are the vegetable towers. And the reason I mentioned that is because if you look, there are different techniques. They are called aeroponics and aquaponics. And what you need to remember is that aeroponics, you save up to 95% water compared to traditional methods. You need 85% less fertilizers, and you have 3% increase in productivity, meaning that 1 square meter is produced as if you had 3 square meters. Another thing about nuclear power and also small modular reactors is we could actually use them to save coal power plants. Most people want to simply destroy coal power plants around the world, which... most people want to just destroy coal power plants around the world, which is kind of a waste because we have built them and they are already paid. And there are not many differences between a coal power plant compared to a nuclear power plant. It's just the heat source that is completely different. And small modular reactors, we could just simply take away the boiler room, replace it with a nuclear reactor, and now you have your coal power plant that is a nuclear power plant. And so you need less investment, and the people that are working there still have a job. One last thing is, I argue that contrary to what we think, the world needs more energy. This is a graph that tells you the energy need from each country compared to the GDP per capita of said country. And as you can see, it's a linear line. And there's one place that you don't see any countries. And what this means is that there are no rich countries that don't consume little energy. The amount of money a country can generate is directly linked to its energy use. Voilà. So now, as a conclusion, I want to tell you that the energy from burning 1 atom of coal is 4 electron volt of energy, and the fission of uranium is 200 million electron volts. Now, if you look at the world around us, well, what have we done? Well, we have trained, we have modern agriculture, we have modern chemistry with all its benefits, we have aerospace, we put a man on the moon, and this It's just a world that was built on 4 electron volts of energy. Now imagine the world we will be in if we use 200 million. Thank you very much.
It's working? Yes, working. It's up to me again. Are you sure? Now we are coming for the next step of our evening. It's the questions. Feel free to ask your questions, and Benjamin or perhaps Mark will answer to you. Please. I give you my microphone. Thank you.
Hi, Benjamin. I'm Jonas from the Netherlands. I already asked you this question personally today, but I think it's interesting to discuss the whole group. But you say Luxembourg should consider nuclear energy. In what way, or what would your vision for nuclear in or around Luxembourg be?
So I believe that first of all, we need to change the law in Luxembourg because there is a text, a simple line in the law that says that it is illegal to build a nuclear power plant because it's not a solution to fight climate change. If we can change the law, I hope that one day we will be able to build at least 1 nuclear reactor to provide enough power to power just all the industries and every homes in Luxembourg. Then we can see later on what we do about electrical cars or if we need more energy. So I think that's what we need to do. Yeah.
Another question? Yeah.
Thank you. Great presentation. So I'm visiting from the United States, and it's always interesting coming to different European countries and understanding the culture and the politics. So Luxembourg is sandwiched right in between France and Belgium and Germany. And I find it interesting, why is it that maybe Luxembourg takes after Germany more so than France, and where did this come from? I know that the nuclear plant is very close to Luxembourg, and if you don't know anything, it looks very daunting, and the towers can be very scary. But why is it that Luxembourg maybe it is more in line with Germany than France on nuclear energy?
Well, politically speaking, Luxembourg has always followed a little bit Germany, but when it comes from nuclear power itself, during the first petrol shock, the government was actively looking for to build a nuclear power plant. The minister himself was saying to the public, if we don't build one, we won't have electricity in the next 5 years. But there was so much protest that Luxembourg, the government, had to abandon the project itself. Then you had France, they built the Cattenom nuclear power plant, and there was a lot of activists who protested against it. Some people, so I heard that some people even said that if Cattenom is built, our electricity will become radioactive. So yes. So I believe for the reason we're taking more to the German side is simply people are fearing that there's something that they don't really know about, and that's it. There's no real argument in that way, so there's no concrete arguments.
Well, during the protests, what time period? Was it because they were afraid of nuclear bombs?
During the 80s, more or less, yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. Does Luxembourg have any nuclear regulatory commissions? Is there maybe hospitals working with radiochemicals, or how is that regulated?
So yeah, we do have hospitals that works with nuclear materials, and they are taken care of by France, if I remember. Yeah, France. And when it comes to nuclear regulation, we had last year, it was last year, there was a European meeting about the deep geological repository in Finland to store the nuclear waste. And we had people from all around Europe that came. I even know one of the nuclear physicists that comes from Romania that came to give some advice on how safe is it, how we should do it, and so we have some experts on it, and I even know one person who works in the nuclear safety to look if about how nuclear fuel is being used. So yes, so we do a little bit of that, but we're still against nuclear power anyway.
Yeah, thank you for this presentation. My question is two-parter. So you're also part of a political party yourself?
No.
Oh,
I'm completely neutral.
Then, okay. So my question is, what is your view on building political coalitions to change the law that you were just talking about? And once you achieve that for Luxembourg, what is your view? Luxembourg is a small country, of course. What is your view on cooperation of pro-nuclear forces within Europe as a whole?
I don't have any issue about coalition because I actually believe that in the future the country will have to ask the question: do we like to pay a high price for nuclear power for our electricity, or should we go the nuclear option? And that will happen no matter what at some point, because next year the energy price will go up by 30%. Initially it was announced 60%. So yeah, I think in the future we will see a coalition of different political parties. And also I'm going to add to that, I will seek to make a petition to cancel the law that nuclear power is not a solution for climate change. And when that will happen, so if I collect 4,500 signatures, so I will have a chance to go in front of the deputies to defend my case. Now, when it comes to a European-wide, how can I call it?
Coalition.
Yeah, alliance, coalition. Yes, actually, I even believe that there will be a huge opportunity for Luxembourg because we are obviously a country of banks, and this would represent a huge opportunities for investors to pull out money and then invest in different European countries.
What kind of financing do you envision for your Luxembourg nuclear power plant? Is it state financing or like several Luxembourgish companies joining forces, for example, like Finland does? Or giving the plant just for a large multinational utility to build and finance?
Whatever works. No. We could see that the country could possibly put money into building a nuclear power plant. I would, however, think that the way it would realistically work is the government will put a little bit of money, then you will have investors that will then complete the rest. That's, I think, how it will work with the government.
Okay, thank you very much for your great presentation. I have just one little question. Is besides the how to say prohibition by the law and other regulation, what are the main obstacles for the people in Luxembourg from using the nuclear power? And another one is, do you have any other, how to say, cooperation or exchange with experts, with nuclear physicians around the world, Americans, and in China? Do you have any contact with your colleagues? Yeah, bien sûr. Across Europe. But worldwide.
Yes.
Okay.
So for the first question, I had the opportunity to talk about thousands of people across Luxembourg. I have met very little resistance. A lot of people will say, yes, we need nuclear power, even though there may be some risk for their designs that alleviate those risks. Some other people are a bit more skeptical, but when you explain them what is a nuclear power plant, how it works, and all the intricacy of it, then they're like, yeah, but why are we not talking about this? Because they only hear the bad stuff. Cadmium is dangerous, the nuclear waste, and all that. So, and I have only met very few people that were fundamentally against it. So obviously the green people, they are against it no matter what. But from people that are, let's say, politically neutral, I never really met a lot of resistance when it comes to that. And now, so actually, so for so we have all these associations that are coming. So each one of them have an association that from their own country, and we discuss a lot. We have access. So we have nuclear engineers. We have people who works also in nuclear power plants, and so also investors. We have a broad range of people. I believe we also have people from China in the group. Not many. Okay. Well.
But
So,
South America, Australia, China's the one. And we used to have people in Russia, but of course it's not.
Other questions? Yeah. Oh, Mark. Please.
Has there been a poll taken, to your knowledge, about nuclear energy's popularity in Luxembourg?
Not at all. And I actually firmly believe that if now we were to make a referendum, we will get a little bit over 50% in favor just because of energy price.
What's the process to set up a referendum? Just asking, theoretically.
Actually, it's I think it's the deputies who can only choose if we can make a referendum. So it's only the deputies, and yeah, so they do the referendum, and they don't necessarily need to follow what the referendum says. So it's just a poll about the opinion of the people.
Got it. One small comment I would make. One of the largest nuclear plants in the world is right near Luxembourg. It does not historically operate particularly well. There's enough electricity for pretty much all of Luxembourg just in that plant operating better and getting slightly higher capacity. I think that if I were to make a friendly suggestion, a very powerful campaign could be built out of Luxembourg going on a friendly mission to France to get them to operate. If they just operated the nuclear plant on your border, as well as Americans operate the exact same plant, there would be enough to precipitously drop the price of electricity for all of Luxembourg.
Well, one issue with that is that we don't have now a lot of electricity coming directly from France. So I know that some of the French electricity goes through Belgium and then is transferred. So we import Belgian electricity, but we don't have really a direct connection. So we will have to do a lot of management.
Stuff like that scales with the difficulty of the terrain and the length of the wires, and no offense at all meant to your country of Luxembourg, but I don't think the length of the wires will be a major obstacle.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, honestly, I kind of hate myself for asking this question, but what about the waste? Like, as far as I know, it's not possible to just give the waste to any other European countries. It cannot cross the borders and has to stay.
They give it to Belgium for the nuclear waste of medical applications.
Oh, okay. Okay, so apparently it's possible. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a German thing.
Okay. Only Germany and Switzerland do this kind of weird stuff. Okay.
Well, we're connected with Benelux, so we have the Belgian-Netherlands association, so we can always find a solution on that note. But I believe for now what we call spent fuel, it will be a great asset to collect as much of it. So when we have what we call fast nuclear reactors that will come online, it may be used as a source of fuel.
Okay, so
I would like to say that he raised an interesting point, and that is many small European countries will have problems having their own spent nuclear fuel handling facility. The Netherlands is an example, Czechia, Slovenia is especially troubled because there's just one very small reactor for which it needs to find a spent fuel facility. So, especially for Luxembourg, which is a small country and would only have like a small nuclear fleet, should there be like a Luxembourgish-led effort to develop a joint European program for all these smaller countries to cooperate maybe with a country of larger size or already has a repository like Finland, to find a solution to this together, rather than what is currently in place, where it's the standard that most countries deal with their own stuff and can't really use the repositories of other countries?
Yeah, actually, I think there is normally a law, a European-wide law that is now being voted, because some countries want to do carbon capture and deep geological burial, and it has raised some question, because how can we send our pollution to another country? And there are now laws, I don't know if they are actually voted or if they are going to be voted on, how we can manage that. So how can we send waste to different countries, legally speaking? And so, yeah, so I think it will also encompass nuclear waste when it comes to that. And so it may solve the issue for small countries, how they're going to deal with fission products.
Other questions? No more? No? Yeah, another one. Yeah, I'm not finished, I'm sorry.
Okay, so I can go for another question.
Yes.
This high temperature reactor with 1,200 degrees heat. How does it like not melt itself? How does it work? Is anyone able to explain this?
Well, we have some metals that can withstand very high temperature. The reactor you saw was, the inside was also made of graphite, and graphite can survive 2,000 plus degrees Celsius without any creep. So there is no issue on that. When it comes to even without using graphite, we have steel alloys that can survive very high temperatures. In jet aircraft, they use, I don't remember the name of the alloy, but it can survive 1,400, 1,500 degrees Celsius, no problem. Now you have to take into consideration the heavy radiation environment. But yeah, if it comes to metal, we know how to make metals that don't creep at high temperatures. And if we cannot use metals, we can still use carbides that are even more capable of withstanding those insane temperatures.
Are you thinking about how that functions?
Yeah.
Germany used to have one.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So
so what you have is you have a gas, the helium that goes through, and you have the pebbles, right?
Yeah.
You have the pebbles, and that's when reaction happens. The gas is the one that takes the heat out. The gas is the function of the water.
Yeah.
If you think about like what a reactor does with the gas,
Okay.
the gas is the one that extracts the heat, and that just goes through the same loop.
Okay.
The
So
same
yeah,
functionality.
my question was kind of like the pipes. I mean, that's around the coolant, but I guess
yeah, well, so you have different types of design. You have what we call pebbled.
Different systems.
Yeah.
It's the same functionality, it's just different systems.
Mhm.
The control rods and carbon.
Yeah.
So you have different type of design. So you have the classical tubular design, and then you have what we call pebble reactors. So they use pebbles. Are actually very hard. We have one this morning that talked to us about how those pebbles are very, very strong. He thought first that by just dropping them on the ground, they will immediately explode. But he said, no, you can literally hit them very hard, they're very solid, so they withstand without any issue being shocked, and also the high temperatures. The only issue is that when you recover the pebbles, we don't know what to do with them. We don't know how to recycle them to access what's inside, and so that's why a tubular approach is a little bit better when it comes to gas-operated reactors.
Excellent.
Because it was already mentioned, I think the German gas reactors here were a really good example for the stuff that can go wrong with such a type of reactor. Yes. And even though that the fuel pebbles are very strong mechanically speaking, they are starting to leak when they heat up, when you have issues with the cooling. And this, together with the policy that we do not accept any fuel leakage in these reactors, leads to these reactors being very limited in the thermal output that they can produce from a given volume, which will make them comparatively uneconomical. It roughly limits to a tenth of what conventional light water reactor does. I think currently the Chinese are experimenting with this technology, and they have built their 100 megawatt electric reactor inside a pressure vessel, from very similar to a boiling water reactor, but such a boiling water reactor could produce well in excess of a gigawatt. So with this gas reactor technology in our current regulation, we are basically prohibited from building large size reactors. We can only build very small reactors which don't have the economics of scale that the larger ones have.
So actually the only reason I like gas-cooled reactors is not to make electricity out of them, it's for the use in the industry, because high temperatures can be harnessed for just the industry. But now when it comes to producing electricity, water reactors, molten salt reactors, definitely I would go with them.
I would counter to that, and I don't need a microphone for it, that we have seen historically that nuclear power from light water reactors can get below 2 cents per kilowatt hour. And with these high temperature gas reactor, I have issues in seeing them growing below 2 cents per kilowatt hour thermal anytime soon. That, in combination with how much easier it's often to direct electricity to heat something up, makes me, for all the high temperature applications, more confident that direct electricity use is more productive here, while as long as you stay below 500 degrees, thermal power from nuclear is probably a good idea.
Yeah, well, it just depends what the market will decide. That's always the market that has the last word, I would say.
So last small question, maybe, I don't know if it will be the last one. But no, what would it take for us to see the public opinion to change in Luxembourg and to have politicians that actually support nuclear power with a majority and therefore having a change of law? That's for you, I don't know.
Well, for the public opinion to change, I think we just need to talk about it. There's a lot of people who don't know at all what nuclear power is, what radiations are to begin with, and they're just skeptical. It's not that they're profoundly against, it's just why should we go there when I don't know about it? So that's what we need to address, and then I would say that the general public opinion could actually change. I don't say that now 100% of Luxembourg will become in favor, but a good portion of them. And when it comes now to politicians, I know for a fact that most of them are not against it, but they just don't want to make the first step.
Thank you. So let's do it. Let's make a fuss.
I think no more questions.
Yeah. What's for dinner?
Yeah. Just now we will continue our evening because we are going to El Barrio. This is a restaurant, Spanish restaurant, not very far from here, and you will continue to ask your questions, more privacy. So I think it's a good time to be there also. And then perhaps Emmerich would like to sing his special song. I hear it in Lisbon. It was so funny. And then after that, then we go then to El Barrio.
At the restaurant? Or?
Andreas, kommen Sie mit? Andreas mit, da kommen. Doch.
Yeah. I just don't have the lyrics.
Which song? Sing and dance.
No, it's a funny song, a really funny song.
Does anyone want to sing with me?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Andreas.
No, you can. No, you.
Come on, boys.
Yeah, sure.
Well, which song is it?
Get around.
Help is coming.
Which one do we sing? I guess it's only you is the best one for because we don't have the music, right?
No,
Well, we don't have the music. A cappella?
It's a cappella. It's a cappella. Come on, man.
No.
Are we ready?
Never. But let's
No.
go.
You're never ready?
Yeah, actually, you can find the instrumental.
I'll do the instrumental.
The instrumental on YouTube or?
It's fine. No, this is no.
Okay.
Alright.
Well, okay.
You ready? I'm gonna start.
But we're gonna expect you to sing
It's
on.
gonna be my core.
You're gonna
the
join
cringe.
with us, right?
Enjoy the
You ready
cringe.
for the cringe?
So we need the text though.
Some men say only fools vision, but we can't help falling in love with you. Is it true? No emissions. Why we can't help falling in love with you. You to 35, you to 38, you to 33, vision for you and me. Nuclear power, just what can't it do? Why we can't help falling in love with you. Thanks a lot. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this wonderful song. You